Nestled in the Thanjavur district of Tamil Nadu stands the small pilgrim town of Thiruvayaru, which is renowned for its association with Saint Thyagaraja, regarded as the greatest among the music composers of South India and one of the most revered musical prodigies of all time. Sri Thyagaraja, along with his contemporaries Shyama Shastri and Muthuswami Dikshitar, are known as the Trinity of Carnatic music. It is not possible to think of a Carnatic music concert without the Kritis of Thyagaraja forming the dominant segment. His musical works in Telugu and Sanskrit, which he set to notations and ragas, form ready-made compositions for Carnatic musicians who look up to the saint composer with utmost veneration.
When Carnatic music really needed a resurrection, there appeared on the scene one of the greatest personalities.
He was not a mere saint with prophetic abilities in musical miracle making, nor did his music and poetry come from his genius talent alone.
He talks of so many things. Management of time sometimes, then how one should behave in the society. So we have a lot of things that are relevant even today to our society, morally, ethically, principally, in so many ways.
250 years after he existed, his compositions, it is still so relevant. It has not become obsolete. It is there in our consciousness so solidly. We can never get rid of Thyagaraja from our consciousness.
Thyagaraja was born on 4th May 1767 in Thiruvayaru in Tamil Nadu as the third son of Ramabrahmam and Sitamma, and was appropriately given the name of the famous deity of that place. In one of his later compositions, Thyagaraja declares Sitamma as his mother, Sri Rama as his father, and Lakshmana and others as his own brothers and relatives.
Sitamma Mayamma Sitamma Mayamma Sri Ramudu Maku Tandri Sitamma Mayamma Sri Ramudu Maku Tandri Sitamma.
Thyagaraja studied Sanskrit at a very early age. Besides Sanskrit, he received training in the knowledge of Vedas, Upanishads and scriptures. His father, Ramabrahmam, who was an expert in giving discourses on the Ramayana, inculcated Rama Bhakti in the young Thyagaraja and taught him Taraka Mantra. He was also taught Rama Shatakshari and Narada Mantra by Swami Ramakrishnananda. He underwent Gurukul training under Sangeet Vidwan Sonti Venkataramayya. Thyagaraja continuously chanted Ramanama, or the name of Lord Rama, and when he had reached a score of 1 crore, he had a vision of Sri Rama and burst into a song, Yelani Dayaradu.
Balakanakamaya Chela Sujana Paripala Shri Ramalola Vidhuta Sarajala Subhada Karunalavala Gananila Navya Vanamalika Bharana Elani Daya Radu.
Thyagaraja was married to Parvati when he was 18, but she died after 5 years, and he then married her younger sister Kamalamba. A daughter was born to them and given the name Sita Mahalakshmi. By this time, Thyagaraja's fame as a composer and musician had spread far and wide, and his own guru felicitated him and arranged his concerts before the public. Thyagaraja was not only a composer, but also a musicologist who set his compositions in appropriate ragas and laid down the grammar and notations. Thyagaraja brought about a synthesis between devotion and structured musical compositions. Introducing the musical world to many new marvels, his kritis are celebrated to this day and are revered for their ingenuity. Musicologist Vidushi R. Vedavalli says,
his kritis came to represent a veritable archive of the raga and thala schemes. Of the two Melakarta schemes present at that time, Thyagaraja followed the more prevalent Sampurna Mela Paddhati of Govinda. He sharply remarks that mere skill in music, bereft of devotion, is not the best way to practice music. He encapsulates the theory and practice of nada in many of his kritis, such as Sugasuga Mridanga Tadamu, Nadopasana, Nada Tanumanisham, Nada Sudha Rasambilanu, etc. The compositional forms of Thyagaraja Swami show a deep influence of the prevalent musical forms of the period.
In all, about 675 songs of Thyagaraja have been collected and published. Of these, as many as 400 are on Sri Rama and Ramayana personalities. Also notable are his compositions on sage Narada and Devi Tulsi. Thyagaraja has 3 operas in his repertoire, besides Divyanama Kritis and Utsava Sampradaya Kritis. Thyagaraja's range of compositions covered all 72 Mela Ragas and numerous Janya Ragas. He also created new ragas like Bindu Malini, Srimani, Kalakanthi, Vardhani, Chittaranjani, and many more. Thyagaraja adopted the Deshadi and Madhyadi talas in his compositions and was adept in using varieties of intricate laya patterns in his compositions. Vidwan Umayalpuram K. Shivaraman expounds on the rhythmic beauty of Thyagaraja's compositions.
The rhythmic beauty, the arithmetical calculation, and the formulation of the Sarvaloka patterns are something that nobody can really achieve like Saint Thyagaraja. And when we accompany, each time we enjoy a great bliss and we always being transported to a different world. In the Kriti, Sogasuga Mridanga Talamu, he has already put in his lyrical beauty saying, when a master Mridangam artist can accompany this particular music and elevate the music, this particular thing will satisfy Rama. He has really given us the world of Carnatic music, lot of gems, where the musicians will take Raga Bhava and percussionists will take Thala Bhava and Rasikas will enjoy all the Bhavas.
Thyagaraja travelled to many places of pilgrimage like Srirangam, Lalgudi, Tiruvottriyur and Kovur. He also went to Tirupati and Kanchipuram and composed Samudaya Kritis on the deities of those temples. Vidwan Lalgudi G.J.R. Krishnan, noted violinist, who belongs to the lineage of the disciples of Thyagaraja, speaks about the Lalgudi Pancharatna Kritis.
My great-great-grandfather, Sri Lalgudi Ramayar, was born to Srinivasayar and Pravadda Srimati in the year 1807 in Lalgudi. When Ramayar was 10, since he had a great passion and talent in music, in the year 1817, Srinivasayar took Sri Ramayar across the Kolladam to Thiruviyaru to request Saint Thyagaraja to take him as his disciple in the Gurukula system. For 10 years, Sri Ramayar underwent rigorous training, imbibing the values, the music, and the patantara of the saint composer Sri Thyagaraja. In the year 1827, he came back to Lalgudi. When Thyagaraja was on a pilgrimage, Sri Ramayar met him at Srirangam and requested him to visit Lalgudi. That was in the year 1839. Thyagaraja acceded to the request of his disciple and visited his house in Thirumanjana Veedi and stayed there for 10 days. He was fascinated and inspired by the deities of Lalgudi temple, and in this 10 days he composed Lalgudi Pancharatnam, a set of 5 compositions, 3 of which are in Telugu and 2 are in Sanskrit. 2 kritis on Saptarishishwara, the presiding deity, and 3 compositions on the Ambal, Sri Pravriddha Srimati.
Thyagaraja's Bhakti Yoga expresses itself through his kirtanas. In one song, he even declares that without devotion, music would have no value.
Sangeeta Jnanamu Bhakti Vina Sangeeta Jnanamu Bhakti Vina Sangeeta Jnanamu Bhakti Vina Sanmargamu Galade Manasa Sangeeta Jnanamu.
In another song, Thyagaraja says that a blending of swara, raga and thala with bhakti leads to moksha or salvation.
Swara raga Sudha Rasayuta Bhakti Swarga Varga Mura O Manasa
Is salvation possible for those who are lacking in devotion and musical knowledge? Asks Thyagaraja.
Mokshamu galada bhuvilo jivan muktulu gani varala mokshamu.
Thyagaraja's beloved deity was Sri Rama, on whom he has composed more than 200 kritis. In his songs, he joyfully contemplates Rama as a little child, great warrior, devoted husband, friend and master, and casts himself variously in the roles of Kaushalya, Lakshmana, Hanuman, and so on.
Dvaitamu Sukhama Advaitamu Sukhama.
There is also a philosophical aspect reflected in his works, as for instance in one song, he poses a question to Rama, which is more satisfying, Dvaita, duality, or Advaita, non-duality?
Dvaitamu Sukhama.
For Thyagaraja, mere scholarship in music is of no use unless there is real bhakti or genuine devotion. In a good number of his songs, Thyagaraja has expatiated on nadopasana, or music as an aid to devotion and contemplation. The absorption in the joy of melody results in spiritual liberation or moksha. Vidwan Sriram Parashuram, Carnatic musician, explains,
the pursuit of beautiful sound, nada, which we cherish, is equal to the pursuit of the Supreme, the God. So the idea is that Nada Loludai Brahmananda Mandave O Manasa Swadu Phala Prada Sapta Swararaga Nichaya Sahita. Here he says, like a garland of the most delicious of fruits, and then in that relish, that Nada Loludai, let the mind dwell and be in that relish of Nada, and then that is the experience of Brahmananda, absolute joy. So for Thyagaraja, the idea of Nada is equal to the idea of Ishvara or Rama.
It is not easy to make a selection from the treasure trove of his creations. But we present a few gems that capture the essence of the different moods of the saint composer's focus on Sri Rama. Sings Thyagaraja, Rama, is it possible to see such beauty as that of your face, so radiant and resplendent?
Niga niga manuchu kapole yugamu me regayu momu sogesu jude tarama Rama.
Please come to my home, O Raghuveer. I cannot bear the separation from you any longer.
Dasharata Kumara Nandeluko Tale Rama Rama Inti Taka Raghuveera Sukumara Bro Kera Rama Inti Taka.
How fortunate was the lonely huntress Sabari whom you visited. You ate the fruits offered by her and granted her liberation.
Dantulu vara kantalu jagamalta nindiyundaga. Dantulu vara kantalu jagamalta nindiyundaga. ಎಂತ ನಿನ್ನೆ ವರ್ಣಿಂತುನು ಶಬರಿ ಭಾಗ್ಯಮೂ.
O Rama, are you Brahma, Vishnu or Shiva? How have the great scholars determined your identity? Thyagaraja says that the first letter Ra in your name is derived from Namo Narayana and the second letter Ma from Namah Shivaya. Thyagaraja offers salutations to them all.
ಶಿವುಡನೋ ಮಾಯಾಧವುಡನೋ ಕಮಲಾಭವುಡನೋ ಪರ ಬ್ರಹ್ಮ ಮಯನೋವೋ ఎవరంది నిర్ణయించిరీరా.
Can anything be equal to Harinama Sankirtana in the company of your devotees who go in procession around the streets singing thy sacred names?
Hari Govinda Narahari Rama Krishnayani Hari Govinda Narahari Rama Krishnayani Hari Govinda Narahari Rama Krishnayani Varusaga వర్ణించు హరిదాసును వెడలు ముచ్చటగని ఆనందమాయే దయాళు హరిదాసును వెడలు.
Glorifying Lord Rama, Thyagaraja beseeches him to accept him as his kith and kin. You are everything to me. There is none other than you for me to sing the glory of.
Rama Kodande Rama Rama Kalyana Rama 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 Rama Viraja Raja Rama Mukhajita Raja Rama
Viraja Raja Rama Mukhajita Raja
Rama Bhakta Samaja Rakshita Thyagaraja Rama Bhakta Samaja Rakshita Thyagaraja Rama Bhakta Samaja Rakshita Thyagaraja Rama Kodanda Rama Rama Kalyana Rama Rama Kodanda Rama Rama Kalyana Rama Rama Kodanda Rama.
Thyagaraja left for his heavenly abode peacefully in the year 1847 at the age of 80 on Pushya Bahula Panchami Day after performing his daily worship and listening to his disciples singing the glory of Rama. To acknowledge their great debt to Thyagaraja, Carnatic musicians from all over the country gather every year at his Samadhi in Thiruvayaru on Pushya Bahula Panchami Day and render the famous Pancharatna Kritis of Thyagaraja. It is a 5-day Aradhana festival which is a feast for listeners in an atmosphere charged with devotion. Ustad Amjad Ali Khan, eminent Sarod Maestro, has performed at the famous Thyagaraja Aradhana festival at Thiruvayaru and describes his sublime experience.
It was a great honor and pleasure for me to perform at the Samadhi of Swami Thyagaraja. I heard many compositions, but one which I liked because of the text, because of the lyrics, and also the thoughts of Swami Thyagaraja. That in this composition, Thyagaraja is pleading Lord Rama, that is it possible for him to understand the meaning of all the 7 musical notes, Sa Re Ga Ma Pa Dha Ni. So this is very, very humble thought and also very important thought for any musician, that we have to understand the depth of every note. And it was a spiritual trip for me. The bank of Kaveri, the way the trust is looking after that Samadhi. So I'm very fortunate that I could pay my respect to Swami Thyagaraja.
Vidushi S. Soumya, Carnatic music exponent, describes how the Thyagaraja Aradhana festival has now become a global phenomenon.
Today, we have Thyagaraja Day celebrations, Thyagaraja Week celebrations throughout the world, be it North America, Europe, then in Australia, in Southeast, Far East Asian countries. And this happens not only during his birth anniversary or the Aradhana date, which comes around January. It happens sometimes even throughout the world. And we find that the people who get involved in these festivals is increasing every year. For example, I was really happy to be a part of Cleveland Festival this year. I have witnessed the same thing in the past years for a couple of decades now. But this year was phenomenal in the sense that the crowd was enormous and they had to conduct the Cleveland Aradhana Festival in a stadium.
How do we instill the importance of Thyagaraja in the younger generations of today? Dr. S. Samya, Carnatic music exponent, has this to say.
Thyagaraja's compositions are appreciated and are assimilated by not just the elders or the middle-aged people or the musicians, but then are greatly appreciated by the younger generation as well. Because at least at Cleveland and in other places, of course in India, we find a lot of these younger generation musicians and rasikas, students, coming in large numbers and wanting to learn this.
So how do we take it further from here, from the Pancharatnas to the more involved appreciation and learning of these compositions?
Certainly by introducing compositions, smaller compositions like Notuswarams, which Thyagaraja also has composed, and teaching children right at that level, grassroots level, where they can be taught some compositions like Sarasa Netra Paraguna Samaja Siksha Dodharana Papagana Brasamirana Pamara Palita Pavana Namachana, or Gata Moha Shrita Pala Adbhuta Sita Ramana. Or we can go to the next level where the introduction of even complicated ragas are done in a very, very easy and a very, very simple format by Thyagaraja in the form of Divyanama Kirtanas.
The music of the divine composer exemplifies sweetness, peace and bliss, which lingers in the soul through his songs sublime. Thyagaraja lives forever in our hearts as his songs of devotion have made him immortal.